Hey everyone, welcome to A Mighty Blaze's Authors in Conversation. We have a strange and unusual episode today where I will actually be the author in conversation with our author guest. We have the wonderful Maryanne O'Hara with us here today to talk about her new memoir, Little Matches. Welcome, Maryanne. Oh yeah, we get twin copies here.
Well, beautiful hardcover. But thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Really glad to have you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, yours is even prettier than mine. I have the galley.
It's just unbelievably gorgeous.
It's so shiny,
and it has these beautiful end papers.
Oh wow! Look at that. Oh, that's all like all of memorabilia
that I made of all of Caitlin's things and had photographed. So
wonderful. Wonderful.
A little work of art. I'm so happy.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, let me give you the official intro here. So.
Okay.
Maryanne O'Hara is the author of the novel Cascade, and she is the former associate fiction editor of the literary journal Plowshares. She holds an MFA from Emerson and was recently certified by the University of Vermont's Larner College of Medicine as an end-of-life doula, so that she may speak better to the issue of end-of-life care. Her debut memoir is Little Matches, a memoir of grief and light about the life and death of her daughter, Caitlin, who died at 33 of cystic fibrosis, and how Maryanne found her way through grief and found meaning after Caitlin's death. Meg Wolitzer, who's amazing, calls it gripping and true in all ways, a fine, affecting memoir that will stay with me for a very long time. Danny Shapiro says, this luminous, harrowing memoir is a tale of a mother's devotion and grief, yes. But when I closed Little Matches, tears standing still in my eyes, I was left with a sense that I had met not one, but two remarkable spirits, my world enlarged. And I felt the same way. I really did. It was a joy to read. And that maybe sounds strange talking about a memoir of such a heavy subject.
No, the subtitle is Grief and Light, and I want it to be inspirational.
Yeah, and it absolutely was. I mean, I got tears in my eyes, absolutely, but I also felt uplifted by it, and it was really wonderful. Your fantastic book trailer.
Okay.
Give people a quick intro, and then we will chat. So let's hope this works.
Thank you.
After I lost my daughter, Caitlin, I looked for revelation. I became every human who has ever looked for answers to the hard questions. Where is she? Is she? Is there more to life than this life? Does consciousness survive death? Does my existence serve any real purpose? Does anyone's? So I wrote Little Matches from inside real-time grief, and I asked those big life questions. Caitlin became a real sage for all of us. She had so much wisdom. And the last couple of years, while she was waiting for her lung transplant and she was on oxygen, it was easier to write than to speak. After her passing, many of her friends shared her writing with me, including text messages, conversations that would have been lost forever were recorded. So all of her old soul wisdom is in the book in a really cool way. I know I'm not the first person to lose what's most important to me. Humans lose all the time, and lose hard. Little Matches is for anyone who loses and asks, now what?
All right, that's great.
Thanks.
All right, so what I'd love to know is tell us a little bit about when you realized you wanted to write this book. What was the moment or the spark that made you think, okay, I think I do want to write this?
Sure. The only thing that helped me after her passing, the only thing was writing on this blog that I had kept to keep people up to. She was waiting for a lung transplant. She had end-stage cystic fibrosis, and a lung transplant would have, we know people who are 10 years out, it could have been a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
after her passing, I wrote really openly on the blog, and I got such wonderful responses from strangers that I began to feel like this writing had a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the only kind of writing I could do, but really that 9 months passed and I felt really horrible. And my husband and I were walking around Walden Pond exactly 9 months after her passing. And I just realized I had no rudder and I needed to do something. And if writing about Caitlin was going to help, then I wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I made an announcement on the blog that I wasn't going to post so much. I was going to write the Caitlin book.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I called it. And I started and I wrote 10 pages in 3 months. And that felt like a significant achievement at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I made the commitment to write it in early 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote it sort of in a fever. It felt really urgent and necessary. And then I finished it. I almost can't remember the process of writing it. All I remember is that I would be up here at my desk and my husband would come up and say, okay, why don't you come have dinner now?
Yeah. You're fully in the dream and in the moment. Yeah. And was it difficult? I mean, writing, from such a raw place, were there times where you felt like, I just can't do this?
I really felt connected to her while I was writing it. And for most of the book, I'm writing our life, our day-to-day life, the wonderful relationship we had, our wonderful times and travels. And then there's, the really hard part in the middle. And that was extremely hard to write. And I really I looked back on it through edits, but I wrote it and then I really never wanted to look at it again. I had to.
Right.
But and then the afterward, the book is split into 3 parts, and the afterlife is me looking for meaning after her passing, looking for why am I even on this earth? Why is anyone on this earth?
Mm-hmm.
What are those big life questions? What are the answers? And the only kind of writing that seemed to matter was nonfiction. I couldn't fictionalize this. I had to write it for real.
And sometimes when it comes to asking big questions like that, I don't know if this is just writers, but I mean, you find the meaning through the writing. I mean, writing is thinking in a way for us weird writer people.
For sure. And it was really a really good way to process my life. And I knew that in my fiction, my themes were always what's the meaning of life, basically, not to be trite, but I was always focused on those same themes in my fiction. And now the answers weren't something to ruminate about. They were answers I needed. And I wanted to go in search of them in real time while I was experiencing real-time grief.
Yeah.
And I wanted to write about it. I wanted it to be a record of real grief too. I think if I wrote it now, a few years later, I would be a bit disconnected from it. And during that time that I was writing it, I was crying so much, just every day anyway, that I had to go to the eye doctor because I just kept getting horrible styes in my eyes. Like my eyes were just like so blistered from crying every single day. And I thought, will there ever be a day when I won't cry again? So I wrote the book from in there, but I also did not want it to be a book of misery. I wanted it to be uplifting and inspiring. And I think Caitlin's example is very inspiring, and her writing is in the book a lot, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
She was a little philosopher, really. And
she was, yeah.
And so, yes, as a writer, I was also able to be the author and separate myself from the grieving mother and, try to artfully tell the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the real wonderful things about the book, I think, is Caitlin's writings and your text exchanges together. There's just it's a lovely way of seeing your relationship, and then Caitlin's letters and emails to her friends, and they are just this great. You do get the sense that living with an illness like Caitlin had was so much a part of her identity. And, she had a wisdom kind of, beyond her years, probably starting from a very young age.
Yes.
But she was also like an ordinary young woman who liked to have fun and will you read a few of those
funny things?
Yeah, those funny things. I mean, there's so many gems of wisdom, and I hope people will read the book and take in all these gems of wisdom. But I want to give people a sense of who she was.
Exactly. The gems of wisdom are wonderful, but they need to be read and
in context.
And also, I don't want to read for 10 minutes and risk putting people to sleep. I don't like to be read to, so I always assume other people don't either. Yeah. Anyway, this is something that when she was 25, Facebook people were doing 25 random things about me, and she sent me an email and she said, this thing is going around Facebook. Of course, I'm not going to post it, but I would like you to see it. And it was just cute. So I won't read it all. I won't read all 25 things, but I'll read a few of them. Sometimes to help me fall asleep, I take one sock off with the opposite foot's toe and then take the other sock off with the other toe, but only halfway, and leave my toe in the sock. I would actually like to eat those bugs they fry up that you see on TV in Asia. She really did want to eat those sometime.
Hey, why not?
One time an escargot slipped out of its pincers up into the air, down my shirt, and into my bag in a cafe in Paris while I screamed, ah! I like to take showers in the dark at night before I go out. And in the summertime, I will bring a beer in there. My left breast is bigger than my right. My left is my favorite.
Oops. Sorry.
I love looking at myself in the mirror when my hair is in hot rollers. I love looking at myself in the mirror.
Hey, who doesn't, right?
If my life were different, I would have joined the Peace Corps. And that is something that she really, really would have loved to have done.
Yeah.
And she talked about it with her doctor at one point when she was about 18, and her doctor was like, absolutely not.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but she did manage to do a lot. She
really did. She made the most of it.
And I think what I was struck by, although it was somewhat familiar to me, having had a child who was, had a life-threatening illness, though obviously it wasn't the same. But what you did so well was show that you can live a happy, ordinary life. You can laugh, you can love, you can make, inappropriate jokes and gallows humor, even while you're living with something very, difficult and dangerous. You have to, right? You really have to keep going.
You do. And it is your life. And I'm sure you experience this. You just get used to it.
You do. Yeah.
And so you're not sitting around every day saying, oh, I'm dealing with an illness,
right.
unless you're in a crisis period, life is pretty normal.
Yeah.
And then when we were in a crisis period, we adapted to it and we took care of the crisis. And usually the crises went away up until the end. And
right.
Even at the end, we were, hospital humor. It's a thing.
It is. It's thank God for hospital humor. We do without it. It's some of the best humor.
It really is.
You can shock your, your friends who haven't had that experience by making those hospital humor jokes, and they're like, "Oh my God, what are you saying?"
Well, do you know that that famous Lori Moore story? People like that are the only people here. I remember when that first came out, I read it. I said, "Oh, she didn't make this up. She knows what it's like to live in the hospital."
Oh, absolutely.
So authentic. It was so real.
I read it long before I had experienced that, but I went back to it afterward, and it's true. It's true. There is something you capture, and something about having your child be in that situation that. Yeah. So, one of the other things that struck me when I was reading the book, and I wondered, so for 2 years you waited for a lung transplant for Caitlin, right? It was 2 whole years.
It's 2.5 actually.
2.5. Okay.
We lived in Pittsburgh for 2 years.
Right. Okay. So, but you really had to uproot your life in a way. You were sort of some in Pittsburgh and some in the Boston area, and you could only be a certain amount away from home. You had to be able to get there quickly. That suspended state of being, of waiting. It's so hard. And I thought you portrayed it really well. And I kept thinking, gosh, we're all in a sort of suspended state right now. We have been for the past year, right? And I was wondering, do you feel like having that learning to live and sit in that discomfort of waiting prepared you for this past strange year?
Absolutely. I've been pretty unfazed by the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally,
mm-hmm.
I feel really terrible about people who've gotten really sick, and people who've lost loved ones, so many. As far as my daily inconvenience, waiting for transplant was far worse. Caitlin, she always got better over her lifetime. And then this one holiday season, she started needing oxygen all the time. She was really sick. And it was clear that, she had finally turned a corner. And within weeks, we had to literally up and move to, we had to go to Pittsburgh for a million reasons. It was the only place that would transplant her.
Yeah.
We had to literally up and go there without knowing if we were coming back until transplant.
Right.
So that all started in January of one year, and she went on the list, and we waited until winter in Boston, hoping she would be called.
Right.
You have 4 hours to get to the hospital.
Right.
And you have to scramble for a medical jet, and there aren't that many medical jets flying out of Boston.
Really? Oh, right. Because they're all calling in. I remember saying that. They're all coming here.
Exactly.
Right.
It's unusual. So we, and then when winter came, we thought, well, we'll wait out the winter in Pittsburgh. Surely she will be called. And we were there for 2 full years.
Yeah.
We had to wait so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason she was really strong for so long, and then toward the end, she just really wasn't, and her body did not survive the transplant. That if she had had it even a month earlier, probably would have been a different story.
Right. You're kind of, you were at the mercy of happenstance, and if there's going to be a donor and the right donor, and
there's no controlling that. So so the pandemic, I've been able to enjoy things about the pandemic, and stop and smell the roses kind of enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sick of it, but like everybody else.
Yes.
But yeah, waiting for transplant was such a trapped, horrible feeling, and we couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
And we had to be in Pittsburgh, which was a wonderful city, but it wasn't home. I moved there full time with Caitlin.
Yeah. And
her boyfriend and dad came.
So, and you were blogging actively throughout that period, right? You're giving people
but just updates, well, we're still waiting, nothing's happening. Doing well, but nothing really. And it wasn't until she went in the ICU and it was a real crisis that I just started writing from the heart and basically begging people, because there is such a thing as designated donors. Like if somebody knows, and we did have one of those and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Did you feel like, what did you get out of the experience of the blogging? Was that, because I think, I think you had said, I was watching your interview last night with Lily King, that you hadn't really written personal stuff before, right? You'd written fiction. That was kind of your métier, and you hadn't considered, but the blogging seems like it was that first entree into writing, personal writing.
It was, and it was, during the ICU and then after her passing, when I really wrote very, very honestly. And I felt like I was just connecting with Caitlin, connecting with readers, many of whom I didn't even know. And it felt meaningful. I kept getting these, I called them the you don't know me letters. You don't know me, but I just want you to know that your stories help people more than you may know. And that felt meaningful, and at a time when nothing felt meaningful.
Right.
So writing the personal began to feel good. And then I thought, I want to memorialize Caitlin. She deserves it. People need to know who she was, because she was somebody who really changed lives. I saw firsthand, I've seen firsthand how she's changed people's lives.
Yeah.
Very inspiring.
Yeah. Do you feel like you got to know her better in a way after she died while you were writing the book and seeing her writing?
I like that idea because, I did. We were so close. And of course I did know her, but I I didn't know anything and everything. And I didn't know everything. And it was really remarkable to see how her friends came forward. And she chose her friends carefully. She didn't have a ton of people she would call close friends.
Right.
But this, these 10 people would all say, Caitlin is my best friend.
Yeah.
And I love that. She didn't really suffer fools.
Right. Yeah. No, there's that nice balance of sort of gentleness, but no bullshit about her, which is great.
Exactly. She was fiery for sure. And she never was afraid to sort of speak her mind. And I used to worry about her really because she would, if people were abusing authority, she had no problem getting in their face.
Right.
Be careful now, but.
Right. Well, and she really fought ferociously to save the Prouty Garden at Children's Hospital, which it was such a beautiful place. I went there a couple of times when my daughter was in treatment, and it's just tragic. I really think it's tragic that
it really is. It was so wrong.
Yeah,
but that did give her life some purpose in the last couple of years when she was tethered to her desk and her oxygen machine.
Right.
Wonderful.
Yeah, having that sense of purpose it goes a long way. Do you think you'll I think I remember you saying you were working on a novel that you during the last years of Caitlin's life that you kind of put aside, understandably. Do you think you'll come back to it? Is that your plan?
I would like to. I keep planning to. And when a book comes out, you end up having so much other work to do around it. And I really I have such a sore shoulder right now. Like I've been chained to this desk for months, but I would like to get back to it. Caitlin was a wonderful editor and reader, and she had been the main reader of that book, and it was almost finished. I was close to a readable draft.
Oh,
so
really?
I do hope to get back to it, and I would like to dedicate it to her.
Yeah. Do you think it'll be different? I can imagine, after such a life-changing experience, it has to change, right?
I know it will. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it just when something changes your mind and your heart, and you look back at old work, I'm sure you see it very differently.
But it's still alive in my mind, and it deals a lot with the ambiguity of memory. And I think it will be interesting to go back to it after not having looked at it for a while.
Is it historical, like Cascade is, or
no? Cascade was in the 1930s. This takes place mainly in the 2000s. And looks back at 1968. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll look forward to hearing more about it when it's closer. What about nonfiction? Do you think you'll continue to write sort of personal stuff, personal essays and memoir?
Oh, I've been really enjoying writing the essays. Like I wrote a piece for Time and a piece for LitHub that, synced with this book. And I really enjoyed that. I always thought I would actually like writing nonfiction. I do think it's a little bit easier because you don't have to make anything up and just put it all together in an artful way. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying I think for me it would be easier.
Yeah.
Then I think it's hard to sort of make something up and have people want to turn the pages. So there's a lot to fiction, I think.
Yeah, there is. This is definitely, I certainly find writing nonfiction easier. It's just, I think, you have fewer decisions to make, right? I mean, I think
you have the material and then you have to decide how to work with it. And of course you can tell a boring story with it, or you can tell a wonderful story about cheese, but you have the material, you're not making it up.
Right. No, exactly. One of the things you said last night, talking with Lily King, I love Lily King. She was great, and she did a wonderful job. But you said, I was scribbling notes as you were talking, and one thing you said was you felt like that having written this book, a big part of your life's work is finished. So tell me more about that, because obviously you are going to continue to write and continue to do things. But
well, exactly, I love writing, and I certainly don't plan to leave the planet anytime soon. But this book just felt so different than any fiction I had ever written and published, which I enjoyed. I love all my pieces of fiction, but this just felt so necessary. And it really, I just have to say, can I just tell you, it felt like divine intervention. I imagined the book looking like this.
Really?
And the publisher was so wonderful about listening to my input. I said, it needs to glow, it needs to have a picture of Caitlin on it, but not a giant picture. She sort of needs to be representative of human life and light.
Yeah.
And then the end papers, like, I just feel like it's so beautiful. And then I recorded the audiobook. So I felt like, okay, like I put that into the world and it's done. And I'm so, I was nervous before it came out. I was nervous before I recorded the audiobook that something would prevent the book from being published, or something would prevent me from getting into the recording studio. And
like a pandemic, or
a pandemic, yeah,
little stuff like that.
I recorded it in February when my throat was dry, and I was worried I was going to get COVID or just a cold.
Right. What was that like recording?
It was grueling, but good.
Okay.
Good. I had practiced. I read the book aloud twice in September and December because I knew I put it in the contract that I wanted to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but it went very well.
Yeah.
But it does. You have to really baby your throat.
Yeah.
4 hours a day was enough for me. It was the max.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be exhausting, but memoirs absolutely, I believe, should be read by the author. I mean, I can't.
It sounds weirdly inauthentic when it doesn't.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's really kind of distracting.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now the other thing I know that you're spending some time on. Oh, okay, wait.
How Juliet?
I'll go back to that. Oh, Juliet, yes. What can you talk more about your experiences of finding Caitlin after her passing? Yes, this was a fantastic part of the book. Was your experience?
Well, Caitlin and I had toyed with the spiritual and the paranormal and all that, but in a speculative, ruminative, bemused sort of way.
Yeah.
And then after her passing, I looked at those same sort of books that we had read. We called them soul books, and they're comforting in the moment. And they're, the ones that I refer to in the book were, are written by people who have good credentials. And
what are some of those books you want to throw?
Well, everyone knows that Brian Weiss, Dr. Brian Weiss, he wrote books back starting in the 90s about stumbling into afterlife reincarnation research totally by accident, and coming to believe that it was real. And if you read his book, and he's somebody with top medical credentials, and if you read his book and believe him, what he's saying is kind of irrefutable. Like, if you believe him, and he's very believable. And
so he writes about the children, right, who have memory.
Well, that's the guy down at
that's the different guy.
At UVA doing reincarnation research. But Brian Weiss was a practicing psychiatrist who was using hypnosis to help people with phobias, et cetera. And this one woman years ago at the beginning of his career was going way back into the past and saying things to him from the spirit world, things that only he and his wife knew about a child they had that had died. And it was, it was very convincing. But then after I lost Caitlin, I'm reading these books and I'm thinking, it's wishful thinking, I'm a gullible mother. And yet I came to realize that there is a lot of research into all of that out there, like the doctor at the University of Virginia. Right. And our culture just doesn't really talk about it. And so I thought, well, I would like to explore this world a little bit and see for myself what's really out there and what does science have to say about all of this. So I document that in the book as well. And I also write that, the synchronicities, the so-called signs that happen regarding Caitlin are overwhelming. And to the point that really, after a while, to just say, oh, it's a coincidence, day after day, it just seems a bit myopic. And I also think, I really finally came to the conclusion, I don't have any answers, but I really like asking the questions. And actually, this is I had put this in Caitlin's Christmas stocking. The first year of transplant, I said, the world will be yours. And there's a quote in the book, and I was reading it one day to a bunch of librarians last week. And she talks about how she would like just sort of picture herself in time and space geographically and sort of zoom out and just look down on the world and see her place in it and just be okay with that. And it would help her cope with her illness. Mm-hmm. And at the same time that I was talking to the librarians, they were asking about the science. And I was like, you know, it wasn't that long ago that people really believed the earth was flat. And you can see why they believed it. So I think to just discount something without proof is just as silly as believing something fully without proof. So I like to keep an open mind. And honestly, some of the synchronicities are insane.
Yeah. No,
and I talk about them in the book, and I've written about some of them on my blog.
Yeah.
And it's also actually, it makes life kind of fun.
And it's also like, why not choose to accept them as synchro? You know, why not accept them as meaningful rather than just repeatedly refuting them?
Right.
Feeling that you should or you're supposed to.
Exactly. And what I found that when I started sharing some of these things on the blog, the most unlikely people would come up to me and say, well, you know, this happened to me and I just thought I was crazy. And so I just thought, but there's more to this than most people are talking about.
Right. One other thing that I know you've been learning and starting to do some work with end of life care, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a doula. And I think that there's a lot that our culture, we don't talk about some of the more spiritual sort of stuff that you talk about, but we just don't do a very good job of talking about end of life and being prepared for end of life. And so I'm curious to know what do you think we get wrong, right, as a culture, and what do you think people could do? What do you wish you had known or had maybe done differently?
Yeah, I've really always liked working. I've been a volunteer for a long time, and I like working with people who are old or close to the end of life, because often they are just people who they finally get it, or maybe they always got it, but regardless, they get it now.
Yeah.
And I volunteered in Pittsburgh with this man who was, at the end with ALS, and we just had the most wonderful conversations. He was accepting of his death. And I moved back here, and he was in Pittsburgh, and he texted me the morning that he was going to go off the vent, and he just said, "I've decided to leave in the shadow of the moon, and thank you for all your love." And I just got chills. It was one of the most meaningful text messages I've ever gotten in my life.
Yeah.
And I think that, with Caitlin, of course, we never really wanted to accept that it would happen. And we alluded to it. There were times she certainly did. But you almost are afraid you're going to jinx it or something. And
yes,
that was certainly the case with her. Mm-hmm. And then like with my mom just had a lifelong fear of death and didn't want to acknowledge that she might be close to death, and wanted to keep thinking, oh, it's 10 years away. It's 10 years away. And I'm hoping that through some of the things I'm doing, I wrote this piece for Time magazine about life interviews and legacy work. And I'm going to do some legacy workshops at the end of May. For people, just free little workshops, helping people. You don't even have to be at end of life, but I think if you just sort of take stock, if you just sort of acknowledge the arc of a human life and the fact that we all have that arc, we are all going to come to the end. And if you just take a moment to acknowledge it and then think, okay, am I really happy with where I am now? Am I happy with this path I'm following? I think a lot of people have taken stock of their lives this past year because of the pandemic, and that's probably a good thing. Yeah. So I do think, we over prepare for birth and we under prepare for death. And I think that if you really think about it, it can make the now, the present, the life more meaningful. Yeah. Because I really think that everyone kind of needs purpose in their lives. And if you're just like on a treadmill or a path with no purpose, I don't think that brings much happiness or contentment.
Yeah. Well, and it may distract you from thinking about some of the harder things, but you're missing out in doing that.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Janice Postwhite, wondering how you decided on the structure, the first part being less chronological than the second part.
Yes. I had so much material, and I just started, I wanted to write from the very beginning. My editor asked me to write the preface. I wanted to start the book right smack at the very loss of Caitlin and describe that and really bring the reader in with me. And then I knew I had to introduce the reader to who we were, who Caitlin was, why they should care. So then I worked mostly chronologically in that second part. But I also wanted to, I had sort of a montage in my head, like a visual of peppering all of the pieces with Caitlin's writings, sometimes not in order at all, text messages through the years, to give a flavor of who we were as characters, and also to give an idea of sort of what drove us forward through life. I was always conscious of telling the story and the fact that there was going to be a reader wanting information and wanting to want more. So I don't know if that really answers the question.
It makes sense to me. And I think at the beginning, when you are kind of grounding us in the history of Caitlin's illness, that's really important to get that in a chronological sense. So it is a lot to organize all that. I mean, writing is information management, right? And
exactly,
bring someone in, and you don't want to push people away immediately by giving them more than they can handle, and then give the you want you want to get us to a point, and I think you do, where we really are feel your grief, and we love Caitlin, in our own way as readers too. And I think I read this in a review. I can't remember who said it, but that even though we know how the story is going to end, at least Caitlin's story is going to end, there's still a suspense, it's still a page turner. And
somebody who wrote that, I read that too.
I
liked it because I wanted it to be that, I was conscious of the fact that I was writing a book, and I wanted people to want to read it and to be engrossed in it. And
it was absolutely a staying up too late and reading it kind of book. I think someone in the comments said that too. It was like, it's that kind of book that you and yet you don't want it to end.
I love that. It came out on Tuesday, and I've already gotten quite a few messages from people saying they stayed up through the night to read it. So
that's awesome.
And they feel inspired to live a better life. So that makes me happy.
So if anyone has any questions, we've got a few minutes left. So folks who are out there, if you have questions, please shoot. I guess I'd love to know from you, Maryanne, if there's one thing you want people to take away from this, and I think you've sort of alluded to this, but what do you want them to go away from this book having learned or having understood better?
I really hope that people will close this book and really think deeply about life and about purpose and what really matters at the end of life. And then feel like, I'm going to love the people I love a little bit harder today. Or if there's something I've been really wanting to do and I've been afraid to do it, I'm going to do it. And Caitlin's passing has inspired a lot of her friends to do things that they had just thought were sort of pipe dreams. And I love that.
That's fantastic.
Pretty wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. And that's somebody living on. Like that's her still being in the world is when she's affecting other people's lives. So wonderful. Well, I want to make sure that folks know where to get your book. I mean, you can get your book anywhere books are sold, but Brookline Booksmith has some signed copies.
I'm signing them tomorrow, yes.
Okay, so wait until after tomorrow, but you can grab them there, and obviously on bookshop.org, you can order from your local bookstore. Thank you so much, Maryanne.
This is very much. This is such a wonderful thing that you guys have started. It's really nice.
Thank you.
There's another bonus from the pandemic, right?
Right, exactly. One of the, you know, with all bad things come good things, and
Exactly.
and yeah, so we're doing our part to make some light, also bring some light into the world. All right. Well, thank you so much.
So much, and I really appreciate it.
Thank
It was
you.
great to talk to you.
So long, folks.
Okay, take care.